let me just go back to this slide, when the identity of his running mate, Honorable Gachagua, becomes more known in the country above this 59% as of yesterday, that will boost the Deputy President's overall standing. Again, we'll have to wait and see. Even if there'll be other campaign activities and events that'll take place that makes it very difficult in a survey to identify the impact of any particular factor. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. I would just like to make a couple of quick points in conclusion. And first I'll go back to this slide. Because people are undecided, either do not vote or they make up their mind. And because people the 8% who didn't answer a question, either do not vote or don't make up their mind, please, when you are reporting these results, do not say, as many people did in the media when they were reporting the results of another survey a couple of days ago, that there must be a runoff because nobody has 50%. That doesn't make any sense. In my view, which could be wrong, unless the total vote of all the other candidates for president and deputy president, besides the top two, are equal to at least 4 or 5%. It's very unlikely that either one of those pairs won't get above 50%, because you have to subtract all those other people of the undecided, will not vote, and no response before you do your arithmetic, before you divide by the total number. So on the basis of this survey, there is absolutely no basis for saying that there would be a runoff. But you might come and tell me, remember in 2007, when the main competition was between Mwai Kibaki, now the late, may he rest in peace, and Raila Odinga, who each got about somewhere between 43 and 45% of the vote, Kalonzo Musyoka stood on his own, got between 9 and 10% of the vote. Now, of course, that was under the old Constitution, which did not have a requirement of 50% plus 1 and at least 25% in at least 24 of the 47 counties. But now we do have that requirement. So I would suggest the closer to that 9% that former Vice President Musyoka got in 2007, that is, the more that he can go up from 2% now towards 9%, the greater will be the possibility of a runoff contest, because by doing so, and remember there's all these other candidates, we don't know how many yet, together they all might get 1 or 2%, that would increase the possibility of the necessity of a runoff, which I believe would take place 30 days from the announcement of the result of this election on August 9th. But as of now, we don't see that percentage. Obviously, if William Ruto and Raila Odinga both get 49% and Kalonzo and the other candidates get 2 or 3%, there would have to be a runoff if neither one gets over the top, that threshold. But that we don't see. And maybe I'll make one other final comment. We have seen in recent weeks or even months, forget Tifa or InfoTrack or whoever else, Radio Africa, and who were doing our surveys and so on and giving you our results. We have seen the political parties and coalitions themselves to an unprecedented degree doing their own surveys and even telling us, sometimes even telling us the results. I was watching Professor Senator Kithure Kindiki being interviewed last night, and he, again, as others have made reference to several surveys that were done in the process used by Kenya Kwanza of identifying their deputy presidential running mate. And you know what those results were. As I recall, there was a general survey among the public in the Mount Kenya area, and then among all the MPs aligned to UDA and Kenya Kwanza in the Mount Kenya area. And we also heard from Azimio. We heard from, I think, a month or two ago, from Raila Odinga's campaign chair, independent governor Ndiritu in Laikipia, that Azimio was using polls to identify the most popular candidate in many electoral units, from governor down to, I guess, MCA, to save themselves all the expense and in some cases turmoil of having to have actually nominations through voting. So this is absolutely unprecedented. But we have also seen, and my concluding point, that when it comes to the actual selection of the running mate by the presidential candidate, in addition to survey results, there are obviously very important factors that have to be taken into account. If I recall, in surveys that were done by Tifa and some other companies, respondents identified Musalia Mudavadi as the best running mate for the deputy president. And Raila had a number of people who were identified, including very prominently Honorable Karua. But as the deputy president explained in his press conference, there are other factors that have to be taken into consideration. And you people in the media, analysts on talk shows and so on, have identified some of these. Mobilization capacity, or at least estimated mobilization capacity of the vote, the personal relationship between the two, so that they work as a very smooth team if they have the honor of being elected. It's also been mentioned what sort of access do they have of resources to be used during the campaign, and so on and so forth. So however prominent polls have been with regard to these very dramatic announcements that we've seen in the last couple of days about the running mates, for better or worse, opinion polls are not the only determinant of these very difficult decisions that have to be made. Just finally, I saw in the New York Times the other day an article where supporters of American Vice President Kamala Harris were complaining, saying President Joe Biden needed her in order to become president. But since being sworn in over more than a year and a half now, he hasn't been giving her enough responsibilities as Vice President of the United States to build her for the future, saying that he should, because without her he wouldn't have been elected. So this relationship between a president or a presidential candidate and a deputy is a very complicated one in all political systems. And I'll stop there. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer, and Maggie would too. And just to quickly review the demographics, as Maggie explained, I think she's already covered this. And this is our breakdown of how we distributed the sample on the far left by zone, based on the distribution of IEBC registered voters, which is a little bit different from the 2019 census, the gender distribution, age, and then education level of our respondents. Questions? But don't ask too tough ones. I don't want to be unable to answer them. Yes, please. Just tell us where you're from, which media house, and then ask your question. Yes.
What explains basically the constant decline in total popularity?
Wait a minute. Constant decline? I'm not sure what you're talking about. For the